This may be the most important testimony you will ever hear. One of the most detailed and shocking descriptions of hell ever recorded. I received this story through email, and I knew immediately I couldn't wait to share it. This testimony comes from a man who endured a terrifying 7-hour journey through hell, where he witnessed firsthand the tormenting punishments, the cries of despair, and the inescapable justice of God. What he saw will not only shake you, it will force you to reflect deeply on the path you're walking. Do not miss this testimony. What is revealed today could save your soul before it's too late. Before we enter this story, I invite you to leave your name and the city you are from. We want to lift you up in prayer before the throne of God, calling your name and asking for His mercy. If the words you are about to hear touch your heart, please consider showing your support by clicking the Super Thanks button. A seed of faith you plant into God's eternal kingdom. He has promised, those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do so today. Let us walk together in the light and truth of the Savior. Now, let us listen to his testimony. My name is Jonathan, and I never believed in hell. To me, it was just a fairy tale, something used to scare children or keep the weak in line. Honestly, who has time to think about things like that? I worked every day. I was a gardener. My life was sweat, silence, the occasional laugh with co-workers, and the quiet satisfaction of a trimmed lawn, a branch pruned at just the right moment. No illusions, no faith, just soil, trees, and hard work. That morning was like any other. I stood beneath an old oak tree in a suburban yard I had worked on dozens of times before. The oak was ancient, its branches thick and full, standing tall like an old storyteller recounting the years gone by. I liked working there, the chirping birds, the scent of freshly cut grass, and the peaceful feeling of being alone with nature. But then, as I brought the saw to a large branch, I heard a small crack. Just a moment, but enough for my heart to skip. I had no time to react before the branch gave way with a loud snap, throwing off my balance. The safety harness I always trusted couldn't hold the sudden weight. I fell. Time slowed. I saw the blue sky flicker through the leaves, heard the wind scream past my ears. Then came the impact. My head slammed hard against a rock below. The pain exploded like the world shattering inside my skull. Hot blood streamed down my forehead, grass scraped my cheeks, and the light began to fade, like a candle snuffed out. I tried to scream, but no sound came. My body wouldn't move, and in the final moment before the darkness swallowed me, I thought, is this the end? An invisible force, irresistible and cold, pulled me downward, deeper and deeper still. No light, no sound, only a growing chill and an even greater dread that swelled with every second. And as I was dragged toward an unfamiliar abyss, I realized something terrifying. Everything I had refused to believe was about to become my reality. Before I was pulled into the heart of terror, I saw something I will never forget, as if the very gates of hell wanted to leave me with a message, a warning. Suspended before me in the air was a man dressed in solemn religious robes, a symbol of authority and reverence. I recognized him. He had once been one of the most influential spiritual leaders of our time. Thousands had followed him, millions had listened to him speak about God, salvation, and love. But now he was there, twisted in a pain that didn't come from outside but from within. His face was a mask of internal torment, as if his soul was being devoured by the awareness of his own lies. That was when I grasped a chilling truth. Hell is full of those who wore the robes of holiness on earth but lived for themselves. Not only ordinary sinners end up there, but also men and women who once led crowds, not to the light but into deception. Some of them were famous, praised by the media, revered as if they were divine. Fame blinded them, ambition devoured them. They preached with their mouths, but their hearts served money, power, and pride. That scene was my first encounter with hell, and it struck me like an early verdict. It made me understand that no one is safe just because they appear righteous. On the contrary, those who seem closest to God are often the farthest from Him. But as I stood there, stunned by what I had seen, something began to shift. The darkness thickened, as if it was preparing to consume me entirely. I thought nothing could surpass that horror, but I was wrong. When they began to drag me further, I realized that what I had seen was only the threshold, and the abyss awaiting me would forever shatter every certainty I had ever held. Fear flooded me like poison. That presence said nothing, yet its silence screamed despair, torment, condemnation. With every step it took toward me, the air around me grew heavier, harder to breathe. It felt like my soul was being crushed under an invisible weight. I tried to run, but my body wouldn't respond. The more I struggled, the more I was pulled downward, as if the very darkness had hands and they were gripping me, dragging me deeper. I felt the fire, not on my hands or feet, but inside, as if my spirit was being burned by a flame that left no trace but caused a scorching, searing pain. I found myself being dragged along a narrow corridor, carved from glossy black stone like obsidian. Every step was a torment, as if my feet were treading on burning coals. The walls seemed to vibrate with a sick energy, and distant screams echoed through the darkness like the cries of lost souls. Around me, tongues of flame flickered without illuminating anything, striking not at my body but at the deepest part of me, like blades slicing through my soul. At the end of the corridor appeared a massive door, made of pitch-black metal, as if it had been forged in the fires of hatred. It radiated a silent but unmistakable threat. Just looking at it made me tremble. I tried to run, but my body was no longer mine. I was like a puppet in the hands of invisible forces. Shadowy figures closed in from all directions, feeding off my fear, laughing without sound. Along the way I saw other souls twisted into living fragments of pain. Their faces were masks of torment, mouths open in silent screams that released only whispers of despair. Some tried to hold hands to help one another, but invisible claws tore them apart. No hope, no redemption. When the door opened, a wave of infernal heat slammed into me. Before me lay an endless abyss of fire and despair. But this was no natural fire. It was alive, intelligent, brutal. The flames licked the screaming souls, not to consume them, but to inflict eternal pain. I saw bodies dragged in, yanked by their hair by grotesque creatures, shoved downward as they begged for mercy that no one heard. Looking closer, I saw the abyss teeming with unnatural beings. Some had broken wings, others had human faces fused with animal heads. They moved through the flames with sick joy, intoxicated by the suffering of others as if it were music. Each new soul cast into the fire was greeted with demonic laughter and screams so agonizing they tore through the mind. Beneath my feet was a layer of black slime, sticky and alive like sentient tar. It coiled around my ankles, holding me down, draining my life. The more I struggled to escape, the deeper I sank, as if hell itself was slowly digesting me. I felt invisible eyes watching me, wicked minds observing with savage delight. From both sides, other presences began to draw near, whispering phrases in a language long forgotten, trying to invade my thoughts. They told me I belonged to them, that there was no escape, that I was born to burn. Then behind me came a shrill, terrifying laugh. I turned, and what I saw froze me in place. A creature over 2 meters tall, with reptilian skin, razor-sharp teeth, and eyes glowing like molten lava. It walked toward me slowly, wearing the smile of a victor. "It's too late now, Jonathan," it said in a voice deep like a cavern. "You lived as if nothing mattered. Now you belong to us." Those words cut into my chest like blades. No appeal, no defense, no mercy, only judgment. And in that moment I understood. Hell is not merely a place, it is a sentence. Time there did not follow logic. Memories overlapped, accelerated, piled on one another like fragments of a nightmare that would never end. I felt as though I had been in that hell forever. Some moments flashed before my eyes, rapid and chaotic, but others were etched into my mind like fire on flesh. I remember being pushed forward, as if pulled by an invisible wind. Along the way I saw things the human heart is not prepared to endure, souls who appeared clean, men and women well-dressed, tidy, even elegant, yet their faces were contorted in disgust, in horror, as they came face to face with the truth of who they really were. What I saw in their fate made me vomit more than once, not because of the unbearable stench, but because of the thought of ending up in their place. I saw judges, men of the law who once held power in courtrooms, now nailed to stakes of fire, wrapped in coils of barbed wire that tightened with every movement. Every time they tried to scream in pain, the wire constricted further, as if their very cries were a form of added punishment. Their sin was corruption, selling themselves for money, for favor with the powerful. The same fate befell officers and politicians. The justice they had twisted on earth now bound them into a cycle of eternal torment. Power had corrupted them, and now it devoured them. Farther ahead, I saw a scene that shattered me inside. Men and women were nailed to a bed of blazing stone, their mouths screaming out names, perhaps the names of their children, of those they had abandoned. They had turned their backs on their families, abandoned their children out of selfishness, lust, or cowardice. Now, from beneath the stone, fiery hands like those of children reached up to them, grasping at them. With every touch, flames erupted on their flesh, as if the love they had refused in life had become everlasting pain. Moving forward, I saw souls bound by rusted chains, forced to carry enormous sacks filled with stolen items on their backs. The sacks were never empty, and each step brought new pain. Some tried to free themselves, to cast off the burden, but the moment they tried, the weight increased, growing heavier. These were the thieves, the vandals, the destroyers who had looted cities, neighbors, and the common good. Everything they had stolen on earth was now crushing them. I had seen them in life, mocking the law, bragging about their cunning. Now they walked hunched over, broken. But what shocked me the most was seeing those who had defiled the sacrament of marriage. Men and women who had betrayed, lied, used their bodies as weapons of pleasure, adultery, impurity, debauchery. They were surrounded by living mirrors, floating, constantly replaying their impure acts. Each reflection was a blade piercing their skin. Each image scorched them, as if their sin was endlessly replaying inside them. They tried to close their eyes but couldn't. They tried to run, but the mirrors followed. There was no escape. I remember with terrifying clarity the moment I arrived at the pit of eternal sin. That's what they called it, or at least that's how I felt it. It was a vast chasm, as wide as a stadium and as deep as the abyss itself. When I looked down, I was paralyzed. I had never imagined that so many souls could exist in one place. There were thousands, perhaps millions, all crammed together in a furnace carved from rock and fire. In that moment I thought, maybe they're all here. Maybe hell is more crowded than heaven. The scene was inhumane. Some souls had taken on animalistic forms as if their sins had transformed their very essence. Human faces were fused with beastly bodies. I saw a man with the head of a lion tearing himself apart with his own claws, as though his predatory instinct had turned against him. I saw others with man-like limbs and horse-like manes writhing as they tried to escape invisible bites. These were souls devouring themselves, literally. Every bite, every tear did not bring death but endless pain, constantly reborn. I understood that these creatures had not been born this way. They were once human, but sin had altered them, merging them with their lust, their instincts, until no trace of identity remained. And now, in the pit, they had become grotesque caricatures of themselves, distorted souls condemned to eternally feast upon their own flesh. I will never forget that sight. It is etched into my mind like an open wound. No horror film, no legend, no nightmare I ever had while alive could compare to what I saw with my own eyes. I kept moving, or perhaps I was pushed. The screams from the pit echoed in my ears like pounding drums, like cursed music I could not stop hearing. But then, just when I thought nothing could surpass the horror of that place, I came to a stop. In front of me appeared a massive wall, as tall as a building, black as the deepest night, surrounded by flames that seemed to breathe across its surface. Between glowing cracks and smoke, I saw a name etched in fire. My name. My legs buckled beneath me. I collapsed to my knees without thinking. In that moment, I understood, with no doubt, no question, that this was not a dream, not a vision, not a hallucination. It was real. This was my destiny. I wasn't just witnessing hell. I had been brought here. This place had been prepared for me. It was a raw truth, stripped of every excuse, every justification, and there was no way back. Something, unseen, untouchable, but relentless, began pushing me forward against my will. My legs moved, but I wasn't controlling them. I was swept along like a leaf in the wind, until I found myself standing at the edge of a vast field of fire, a lake of flame mixed with darkness, boiling in agony. There, I saw what the human mind cannot begin to imagine, a countless mass of souls, perhaps millions, submerged in the flames. Some were being dragged by winged demons, others were being hunted by grotesque creatures. These demons didn't just assault the body, they tormented from within. The thoughts of each soul were read, distorted, twisted. Every sin, every memory, every wrongful word in their life was turned into a sentence. I saw people writhing as fire coursed through them. Others clutched their ears as though invisible voices were tormenting them, as though they were forced to endlessly hear their own betrayals, their own sins screamed back at them. It was the cruelest place I have ever seen, and I was there. I stood still, frozen, as though time itself had stopped, when I realized this was my fate. Not a symbolic vision, not a warning, but my eternal end. Then something happened. From within the flames, a figure approached me. It walked slowly, unsteadily, with hollow, lifeless eyes, like someone who hadn't cried for centuries. It had the shape of a man, but it was as if hell had sculpted it from pain itself. It didn't speak, but its face was carved so deeply that just one look was enough to understand that it had been destroyed from within. When it finally stood in front of me, it spoke. Its voice was like wind blowing through broken bones. "These," it said, pointing toward the souls in the fire, "are those who did not believe. But not only them. Here you will see those who thought hell was just a concept, a feeling, a human theory, a symbol. But look closely." The screams, the crying, the curses from the souls around us were more real than my own breath. It exists, and if it exists, then so does heaven, but not everyone makes it there. I looked at it, unable to speak. My voice was gone. The pain had extinguished even my thoughts. But it continued. Down here are not only the openly wicked, not just the ones who blasphemed, who murdered, who destroyed. No, the ones tortured the most are those who lived with half-hearted faith, those who called themselves Christians but never truly loved God, those who said, "Lord, Lord," but their hearts were elsewhere. Its voice grew heavier, like thunder trapped beneath the earth. Lukewarmness is one of the most hated sins here, because it is deception, pretense, a mask. Those who lived for the appearance of religion, but in the secret chambers of their hearts served only themselves, they receive the most brutal torment here. Then it looked straight into my eyes. "Jonathan, do you intend to stay here?" In that moment, time truly stopped. I found myself on my knees, exhausted. And that's when I began to cry. I don't know how long I was in that state, maybe minutes, maybe hours, but I know that in my entire life I had never felt so disgusted with myself as I did then. It wasn't just regret. It was as if every mask I had ever worn had been stripped away, leaving only the truth bare, filthy, unrelenting. The more unworthy I felt, the more something began to stir within me. A small, fragile light began to flicker deep within my being. As if in the blackest night, a flame had been lit at the very center of my spirit. A light that did not come from outside, but from within. Every tear that fell, every painful breath I drew, nourished that flame. It grew, winding its way through the wreckage of my soul. Gradually that light began to warm me, and the brighter it grew, the more I felt as though God was looking at me, not with hatred, not with punishment, but with a profound sorrow, like a father watching his child destroy themselves, waiting for just one thing, for that child to call out to him. And that was when I did something I hadn't done in decades, not since I was a child. I began to pray. It wasn't a polished or rehearsed prayer, no formulas, no memorized lines. It was a groan, a choked whisper, a name called out with the desperation of someone drowning. And that name was Jesus. Jesus, please help me. But this time, I didn't say it out of habit. I said it with fire, with heart, with soul, as if my entire existence was condensed into that cry, that plea. I didn't even ask to be saved. I didn't believe I deserved it. I didn't expect him to come for me. I just wanted him to know that I had completely changed. I still felt filthy, defiled, unworthy of his grace, but at the same time, praying made me feel alive. It made me feel seen, as if every word from my lips pierced the heart of darkness and let a single beam of light enter that cursed world. I stayed there for a long time. I don't know how long. I no longer counted time. But in the silence between the flames and the screams, in the darkness of the abyss, I found my voice. And with that voice I cried out to Jesus, not to save me, but to remember me, to write my name upon his heart, even if it was already too late. I wanted to be part of the right path. I wanted, even if only for a moment before the end, to stand on his side. Then suddenly everything changed. Not gradually, but abruptly, as if all of hell paused in a single moment, and something entirely different appeared before me. The screaming faded, the flames seemed to recede for a few seconds. In my mind, images began to flash, fast, vivid, like streams of memories I didn't even know I had. I saw myself as a child. I was on a street, and an elderly woman in front of me dropped her bag of groceries. The bag tore open, apples rolling everywhere. Without hesitation, I bent down, picked everything up and helped her repack. She smiled at me. I turned and ran off. Then another scene. I found a wallet on the ground full of money. I could have kept it, no one saw me, but instead I went to the police station, handed it in, and left without waiting for thanks. Another image. I was on the street, and a man was running after a bus that was pulling away, shouting. I started running too, even though I didn't know him, yelling for the driver to stop. The bus stopped. The man got on. He nodded at me. I smiled and kept walking. Small things, forgotten gestures, acts I never told anyone about. There was a time I gently stroked a cat in the middle of the road and smiled at it. Another time, a homeless man asked if I had anything to eat, and I gave him my only sandwich, then kept walking without giving it much thought. Those images, those fragments came faster, one after the other, and it was as if each gesture lit a spark, a tiny flame in the abyss surrounding me. The light grew stronger, more intense, with each good deed I recalled. I felt as though a weight was being lifted off my chest, as if someone or something was showing me what I had forgotten. And in that moment, a new awareness struck me deeply. I had been a good person. Maybe not always, maybe not perfect, but there was goodness in me. But I had never realized it. I lived, chasing after work, money, worldly things. I had never truly made room for God, never fully believed in heaven or hell, but deep inside, without knowing, I had sometimes acted like a Christian. That thought brought a relief I cannot explain, not human relief. It was like, for the first time, a breath of hope passed through that cursed place. The images multiplied, becoming light, becoming strength, until everything turned into a whirlpool, a vortex of light lifting me higher and higher. I felt myself rising. Something was changing. The speed increased. The screams of hell faded into the distance, and I was soaring, rising towards something unknown. But within me, for the first time, I was no longer afraid. It was His power that saved me, His mercy. Jesus, King of the universe, had stooped down for someone like me, filthy, unbelieving, proud, and He pulled me out of hell with pierced hands, still open, still full of love. I deserved nothing, yet He gave me everything. I understood then that His mercy is not just an abstract idea. It is a living force, bursting into the deepest darkness and dissolving it. It is like a sudden wind blowing through the heart of the desert, turning sand into rivers. Jesus did not come to condemn me. He came to remind me who I am and who I can still become in Him. Though I had wandered, though I had ignored Him, betrayed Him, scorned Him with my indifference, He never abandoned me. His love reached me, deep in the abyss, where no human hand could stretch to find me. He did it. He said to me, softly but with authority, "You are no longer alone, Jonathan. I have saved you. But now, live by what you have seen. Bear witness. Proclaim." Those words, I will never forget them. From that moment on, I knew my life no longer belonged to me. I wasn't spared to live the same as before. I wasn't saved to stay silent. I was saved to speak, to tell, to awaken, to shout that Jesus is real, that hell is real, and that salvation can only come through Him. Since then, I've carried within me a sense of urgency, a fire that never fades, a thirst that can't be quenched. I feel that every second I have left is an opportunity to tell the world, don't wait until you fall into the place I was taken to in order to understand who Jesus is. Seek Him now. Open your heart now. Call on Him while you still can, because when you call His name, He will come. And today, if I can speak, if I can breathe, if I'm here to tell you this, it's only because He willed it. Because Jesus Christ won a battle for me that I had already lost, and He did it not with judgment, but with love. I am living proof that no one is too far gone to be saved. It doesn't matter how much wrong you've done. It doesn't matter how many times you've said, "I don't believe." When you call on Jesus, He listens. When you fall, He kneels down. When you're in hell, He reaches for you. There are moments, even after receiving forgiveness, when I still feel unworthy, as if the mercy shown to me is too great for someone like me. But each time I fall into that feeling, it's as if Jesus quietly reminds me that His grace knows no limits, that not even hell can stand against His love. And each time I rise, it's not by my strength, but by the power of His heart, a heart that never tires of loving. I am no longer the man I was. The chains of the past, the memories that once crushed me, have lost their grip. Yes, they still knock, still whisper, but now I know that my victory doesn't depend on my own efforts, but on the faithfulness of the Lord. Every day I'm given is not just another day, it's a gift, an opportunity, a calling to live differently. And for that reason, I understand that what I went through wasn't just for me. My story, though deeply personal, does not entirely belong to me. It is for you, the one listening now, for anyone who has forgotten God or thinks it's too late to come back. It is for those who live as if there's always more time, for those who have grown used to a life without faith, for those who have lost hope and no longer know how to rise again. What I went through is not just a story to leave behind, but a sign, a calling, an urgent invitation to reflect. It is a door that now stands open before you, because I have seen hell, but I have also seen the hand of Jesus reaching for me, and I can tell you with certainty, He can reach you no matter where you are, even in the darkest corner of your existence. But know this, His hand will not force you. It waits for you to seek. I was saved, but the choice is no longer mine. Now it is yours. It depends on what you will do with this message, whether you'll let it pass by like another story heard in passing, or whether, in the stillness of your heart, perhaps through tears, you'll whisper the one name that has the power to change everything. Because if you call on Him with sincerity, He will come. He will lift you up, heal you, and hold you in the arms that gave meaning and salvation to my life. It doesn't matter how far you've fallen, how much guilt you carry, or how many times you've said it's too late. His love is stronger than all your failures, and His mercy is greater than any of your mistakes. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't fool yourself into thinking there will be a better time. The time is now. The right day is today. If you're here, if you're listening, it is not by accident. It is God searching for you. It is Jesus knocking on the door of your heart. And now, everything is in your hands. All I know is this: I died, but Jesus brought me back to life, and I am here, alive, to tell you that He can do the same for you, if you let Him. This was the experience of someone who spent 7 hours in hell, a span of time that felt endless. Though terrifying, he was shown mercy and allowed to return to tell what he saw. But the woman in the next story, she wasn't as fortunate. She didn't just witness hell, she was tortured in it. And what she saw, what she endured, will be impossible for you to forget. It raises a chilling question. Had God abandoned His own child? Welcome back to Eternal Bible Stories, where we share real near-death experiences, stories that have the power to change your life. Today, I'm going to tell you one of the most terrifying stories we've ever received. She wasn't a murderer, she wasn't an evil person, yet when she died, she didn't go to heaven. Instead, she was dragged into a horrifying place she had never even believed existed: hell. Why would someone who thought she was innocent be pulled into the depths of hell? Had God abandoned her? But most importantly, what did she see that left her utterly shaken every time she spoke of it? This story might change the way you see life, death, and salvation forever. But be warned, what you are about to hear is not for the faint of heart. And now let's listen to her shocking testimony. I want to thank Eternal Bible Stories for giving me the courage to tell this story, because truthfully I am deeply ashamed of myself. After hearing my story, I do not expect your forgiveness, but I do hope you will be gentle with me. For this reason, I choose to remain anonymous. If anyone recognizes me, please keep silent. It is incredibly difficult for me to recount all of this, but I must. Not to justify myself or offer excuses, but because the truth, no matter how painful, is all that I have left. I know I was wrong. I know I lived in the worst possible way, thinking only of myself, of money, of fleeting success. I do not seek judgment, nor do I ask for pity. But if there is still a chance, if there is still a way for my voice to be heard, then I hope that someone will understand. My life was a well-crafted lie. I ran an online business selling cheap shoes from China, yet I marketed them as high-end, genuine leather footwear. I deceived my customers with enticing descriptions, edited images, and fake reviews. If anyone complained, I would dismiss them with phrases like, "You should have read more carefully," or "You misunderstood," or "I cannot refund you." I convinced myself that I was doing nothing illegal, that it was simply business. I made a lot of money, I traveled to luxurious destinations, dined at the most expensive restaurants, and indulged in every pleasure that money could buy. But I never once thought about my soul. I never worried about what would happen after I died. I believed that as long as I wasn't breaking the law, I had nothing to fear. And what about God? Yes, of course I had heard of him, but he had never been a serious thought in my mind. I rarely prayed, perhaps only in difficult times, and even then without real faith. Hell, just a fairy tale for those who needed fear to behave properly. I was not a bad person, just shrewd. I simply knew how to take advantage of opportunities better than others. I never imagined that the most beautiful moment of my life could turn into a tragedy in just a single second. That day I was enjoying a luxurious vacation at an extravagant resort where everything seemed too perfect to be real. The sky was crystal clear and the golden sunlight shimmered on the vast swimming pool, turning its surface into a mirror reflecting paradise. The air carried the delicate fragrance of tropical flowers, blending with the gentle sea breeze, creating an atmosphere of absolute serenity. I told myself that I was living the happiest days of my life. Wealth, status, and everything anyone could ever dream of. I could not have imagined that in just a few moments I would cross the boundary between life and death. Standing at the edge of the pool, I felt my body brimming with energy as I gazed down at the pristine blue water below. Jumping into the pool had become second nature to me, a movement so familiar that I could perform it without thinking. Nothing could go wrong. That was what I believed with absolute certainty. I took a deep breath, ready to launch myself into the air and relish the exhilarating sense of freedom as I dove into the cool, refreshing water. But at that very moment, I had no idea that fate was already preparing to strike me with a devastating blow. I leapt into the air, feeling the wind rush against my skin before plunging downward at a speed I had experienced hundreds of times before. But this time, something was wrong. The impact came before I even realized I had made a mistake. A tremendous force shot through my skull as my head crashed violently against the pool's bottom, sending a deep, muffled thud echoing inside my head. Pain exploded, like thousands of needles piercing through my brain, radiating from the crown of my head down every nerve in my body. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. I couldn't react. Everything happened too fast, too suddenly. A blinding white light flashed before my eyes, burning through my vision for a brief moment. Then, complete darkness swallowed me whole, dragging me into an abyss of nothingness. Yet I was still conscious. I still existed, even though my body no longer responded to me. I tried to move my limbs, but nothing happened, as if I had been severed from myself. I tried to listen, but there was no sound from the outside world. Only an absolute, suffocating silence pressed against me. A surge of panic flooded my mind as I realized I had lost all control. I could no longer feel the water around me, couldn't tell if I was floating or sinking, couldn't even be sure if I was still human or just a wandering spirit adrift in an endless void. And then I felt it. A terrifying coldness, not the coldness of water nor the chill of the night breeze brushing against my skin. This was something else entirely. A presence, unseen yet undeniable, touching me, seeping through every fiber of my being. It was so cold that it made me shudder, even though I no longer had a body to tremble. It felt like an invisible, icy hand caressing me, pulling me into a dimension I had never known before. The sensation was both eerie and foreign, as if I had been torn away from the world I once belonged to. In that moment, the horrifying truth dawned upon me. I was dead. I looked down and saw my own lifeless body beneath the water. My face was pale, my hair drifted weightlessly, and the lifeguards rushed in panic, pulling me onto the scorching tiles. Their hands trembled as they pressed on my chest, slapped my face and called my name, but I heard nothing. I felt nothing. I wanted to scream, to tell them I was still here, but I was powerless, trapped between life and death. Then I was no longer alone. A shadowy figure appeared beside me, its presence blurred and unearthly. It stood in silent observation, neither hostile nor comforting. Though its face was hidden, I knew it wasn't human. It extended a hand toward me, an authoritative yet eerie gesture. I could neither refuse nor retreat. The moment it touched me, everything dissolved. No light, no sound, just a vast, suffocating void. I no longer belonged to the world I had known. This was no dream, it was an irreversible truth. Darkness surrounded me, not just the absence of light, but a void so deep it consumed all existence. At first, all was silent, as if the universe had been frozen in time. Then, from an unseen distance, I heard a long, agonizing wail. A soft, desperate sob followed, filled with sorrow beyond comprehension. The rattling of chains echoed, dragging unseen souls deeper into the abyss. Though I saw nothing, I felt them. Thousands of unseen entities whispering in an incomprehensible language, their presence suffocating. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. I clung to the only source of faint light, my guide through this nightmare. But its glow was weak, barely pushing back the overwhelming darkness. In the distance, flickering lights emerged. At first, I thought they were fireflies, tiny beacons in the blackness. But as I focused, horror gripped me. They weren't lights, they were souls. I trembled, my voice barely a whisper. "What are they?" The figure beside me paused, its voice heavy with sorrow. They were once mine, but they let their faith fade into nothingness. Those words crushed me. These souls had once known light, yet they had lost the most precious thing, faith. Now they floated helplessly, unable to escape, unable to return. We pressed forward, but the air thickened, and the darkness grew heavier, weighing on my soul. The cries around me became sharper, filled with unbearable agony. I felt as though I was descending into a place no soul should ever enter, and then I saw it. A colossal figure lying motionless in the shadows. It was not human, yet it bore a vague resemblance to a man, a giant body sprawled on its back, massive hands reaching toward the heavens as if pleading for mercy from an unseen force. Its fingers were like towering cliffs, and clinging to them were thousands of people, desperate, frantic, struggling to hold on. Some teetered on the edge, others were shoved forward, and many had already fallen, swallowed by the fiery abyss below. The horror struck me like a thunderclap. I wanted to turn away, to shut my eyes, but the nightmare was relentless. The screams, the suffering, the burning despair, it was all real, and in that moment, I understood. This was only the beginning. We ventured deeper into the endless darkness, and I lost all sense of time and direction. Suddenly, everything shifted. I turned around and found myself alone. A coldness unlike anything I had ever known enveloped me, and a primal, instinctual fear crashed over me like a tidal wave. The faint light that had guided me was gone. Then the sounds began. Behind me, a muffled groan, low, guttural, filled with suffering. Then a soft, pitiful sob, as if someone was weeping in the shadows, pleading for mercy. Then came the most horrifying sound of all, the rasping, distorted breath of something no longer human. Something was moving in the darkness. At first, a chill crept down my spine, then a sudden jolt. Something or someone was pulling my hair. I felt claws digging into my shoulders, tearing into my flesh with merciless precision. I screamed and thrashed, but the more I struggled, the tighter their grip became. I lunged forward and began to run. I ran blindly with no direction, no sense of where I was going, only the certainty that if I stopped I would be ripped apart. "Jesus, where are you? Jesus, save me! I can't see you!" I screamed into the darkness. But there was no reply. Only laughter, cold, cruel, and growing louder. Ahead, a narrow corridor appeared, stretching endlessly into the unknown. There were no walls, no clear path, just a tunnel of shifting darkness that seemed to tighten with every step. Flames flickered intermittently, casting brief glimpses of the horrors surrounding me. And then, in that flickering glow, I finally saw what was chasing me. Demons. Twisted, grotesque creatures, their bodies distorted beyond recognition. Their gaping mouths dripped with thick grayish-green saliva as if they had been starving for an eternity. Their breath was ragged, feverish with hunger, and their eyes, empty black slits, burned with pure, merciless hatred. Then a light appeared. A sudden, blinding radiance so intense it burned my eyes. Everything stopped. The creatures chasing me turned in sheer panic and vanished into the darkness. Before me the light grew stronger, and deep within my soul I knew who it was. I fell to my knees, sobbing, clutching at his robe. "Lord, why did you leave me alone? Why did you go away? Look at what they wanted to do to me. Please take me out of here. I don't want to stay in this place." But his face remained solemn, his gaze deep and unreadable, and I felt as if my pleas were not enough. "I never left you." His voice rang out, steady and unmistakable, cutting through every fear within me. "I was always with you, even in the moments you believed you were alone. I was there, even when you mistook my silence for abandonment. I never left you. But now, I want you to see something." He took my hand, and we stepped into a place unlike anything I had ever seen. The air was thick with a repulsive stench. The stone walls were covered in grime and mold. The ground was slick, murky, as though it was soaked in something alive and decaying. This place stretched out like a labyrinth of caves, filled with cells carved into the rock, an underground prison of tormented souls. I saw emaciated faces, their hollow eyes filled with ceaseless horror, their mouths open in silent screams. "Jesus, have mercy, get me out of here, I beg you!" The cries pierced through my very soul. But Jesus walked in silence, his expression unchanged, his eyes unwavering. I trembled, unable to look directly at the sunken faces behind the bars. But then I saw someone. In one of the dark cells, a familiar figure sat motionless. Her hair was white, her back hunched, as if carrying an invisible burden of pain. "Grandmother!" She turned to face me, and tears burst from my eyes. It was my grandmother. She looked at me with an expression of unbearable sorrow and despair. I gripped the bars, my chest tightening. "Grandma, why are you here? You did so much good. You helped so many people. You gave to the poor. You took in the homeless. Why are you imprisoned here?" I turned to Jesus, my voice breaking. "Lord, please give me an answer. Why is someone as good as my grandmother here?" Jesus looked at me, his eyes sorrowful yet firm. "Good deeds without me are meaningless," he said, his voice calm yet piercing. "She did many good works, but she never accepted me. She believed her actions could save her, but she never opened her heart to me. Worse still, she was an idolater. She worshipped whatever was placed before her, relying on objects more than on me. That is why she is here." His words struck me like a blow to the stomach. I thought back and realized the truth. My grandmother always kept religious statues, charms and talismans, speaking to them as if they held power. She had never truly sought Jesus. I looked at her, my tears flowing freely. "Grandma, you can call on Jesus now. You can repent. You can escape this place." She wept, but before she could utter a word, a shadow lunged toward her. A clawed hand reached for her, accompanied by a guttural, mocking laugh. Flames ignited beneath her feet, rising swiftly, licking at her frail body, consuming her in unimaginable agony. I screamed, trying to reach her, but Jesus held me back. "Works do not save," he said, as the nightmare before me unfolded into an inescapable reality. The scene did not change. Everywhere I looked, the darkness swirled in an endless vortex. Screams slashed through the air like daggers, and fire roared from the abyss. My grandmother cried out, but the darkness swallowed her whole. I collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder, his voice deep, solemn, like rolling thunder. My child, there is no other name under heaven by which man can be saved except mine. No one can enter heaven simply by doing good. Only faith in me can save a soul. I shuddered. My grandmother had lost her chance for salvation. I kept walking, though each step felt like dragging a crushing weight. My soul sank deeper into the suffocating despair, but I knew my journey wasn't over. Then I saw something that stole my breath, a nightmare beyond anything I had imagined. 3 rivers stretched before me, separating realms of the damned. They weren't rivers of water, but of eternal suffering. The first, thick and crimson, was a stagnant pool of congealed blood, filled with shredded flesh and rotting corpses. The second, a black sludge of filth and decay, swallowed souls who fought to escape, only to be pulled deeper. But the third was the worst, a river of molten lava, consuming the damned in endless agony. Flames devoured them as they writhed in torment, their screams piercing the abyss. I thought I had seen the worst, until I saw the children. They were small, barely 7 to 12 years old, some just turning 10, but there was no innocence on their faces, only pain, terror, and absolute despair. They screamed, wailed, and thrashed, but no one listened. Demonic creatures dragged them across the ground, their claws sinking into their arms, legs, and hair, before hurling them into these dreadful rivers. Some were thrown into the river of blood, submerged in the thick crimson mire, struggling and screaming until they were swallowed into the darkness. Others were cast into the river of sludge and filth, clawing their way up but getting pulled down, their mouths agape in silent suffocation, drowning in the eternal filth and corruption. But the most agonizing sight was the children hurled into the river of molten lava. The moment their bodies touched the fire, their skin ignited, melting away in the unbearable heat. Yet they could not die. Their screams ripped through the air, shattering the void, but no one rescued them, no one answered. I was so overwhelmed with shock that I couldn't breathe, as if my soul itself was being suffocated by unspeakable horror. I turned to Jesus, my voice trembling, barely able to speak. "They're just children. Why are they here?" His gaze was sorrowful but unwavering, as if this was a truth I needed to witness. His voice was quiet yet powerful, carrying a depth of grief I couldn't comprehend. "It is not age that determines one's fate, but a heart that turns away from me." I froze. These children have walked in rebellion, choosing violence, deceit, and rejecting the teachings of their parents. They are the children of believers, yet they never truly sought me. I shuddered, feeling his words strike my heart like a hammer. I wondered how many children in this world had been taken to church by their parents but never truly believed in Jesus. How many had been raised by the world instead of being taught by their parents about God. I watched as the children were flung into the river of molten lava, saw them desperately trying to grasp onto anything, heard their screams as the fire consumed them, and I could bear it no longer. I sobbed uncontrollably, tears falling without end, my heart shattering under the weight of unfathomable sorrow. "Lord, please, stop this." But I knew I could do nothing to change it. We left the place of suffering, but my soul felt torn apart. I walked in silence, tears streaming uncontrollably as sorrow weighed heavily on my chest. The haunting cries of children still echoed in my mind, their tiny hands reaching out in desperation. They had screamed for God, pleaded for salvation, but the heavens remained silent. The further I walked, the deeper despair took hold, like an invisible force dragging me into an endless abyss. I didn't know where we were going, but something terrible awaited ahead. At last, we arrived at a massive staircase leading to a place where even darkness seemed afraid to tread. This was no escape, but a gateway to ultimate damnation. As I looked up, I saw it, a massive, pulsating heart, alive but inhuman. It throbbed as if absorbing the suffering of the condemned, each beat sending shockwaves through the air. The sight alone sent a shudder down my spine. At the top of the staircase, an open door loomed, a passage into unspeakable evil. A chilling laughter echoed from within, a sound so unnatural my soul recoiled in terror. The air vibrated, unseen objects crashed down, and the staircase trembled as if suspended over a bottomless void. Fear clamped onto my chest. I turned to seek Jesus, but he was gone. I was alone. The moment I realized this, the darkness moved. Demons emerged, grotesque, twisted creatures wreathed in smoke, their glowing eyes gleaming with malice. They carried chains and shackles, their monstrous grins stretching unnaturally across their faces. They stared at me as if they had long awaited this moment. I tried to step back, but I couldn't move. "Jesus, where are you?" I screamed, but only emptiness answered. My voice was swallowed by the abyss. The demons lunged at me, their icy claws digging into my arms and throat, chains wrapped around my body, pulling me to my knees. They laughed, their voices merging into a single ghastly chorus. Their whispers slithered into my ears, taunting, mocking, sending a chill through my soul. They dragged me up the staircase. Each step felt like an eternity, each moment drawing me closer to something beyond comprehension. My strength was gone, my will wavered. I was being pulled into the depths of despair. At the final step, a nauseating stench filled my lungs. The air thickened with black smoke, embers flickering through the dense fog, revealing a throne of darkness wreathed in fire and shadow. Seated upon it was Satan. His piercing gaze locked onto mine as he stood. "Welcome," he sneered, his voice calm yet filled with disdain. My body trembled, but I refused to look away. Every part of me screamed in terror, yet I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stand firm. I tried to call upon Jesus, but Satan merely smirked. "It's useless," he said mockingly. "There is no Jesus here." His words struck me like a blade, piercing my very soul. It wasn't just mockery. It was a force pressing down on me, suffocating the last remnants of my faith. My breath hitched, my fists tightened, but I refused to break. Though fear threatened to consume me, I clung to the only truth I had left. Even if I couldn't see him, I knew Jesus was here. I held on to that belief as if it were my only lifeline. I lifted my head, locking eyes with the one who sought to destroy me, and despite the terror in my veins, I spoke. "Jesus is always with me." The moment those words left my lips, the darkness trembled. The very fabric of the abyss began to shift, as if an unseen force was tearing through it. Satan's smug expression twisted into rage. A whirlwind of hellish fury erupted, the air howling as if the void itself was enraged. Shadows coiled, seeking to smother me one last time. But I no longer feared. For the first time, I saw something in Satan's eyes: fear. And then his form began to unravel, at first just faint wisps of smoke, but soon his entire being trembled, distorted, cracked. His presence lost its solidity, as if a single breath could scatter him into nothingness. His wrath turned to desperation, and I understood he had never truly held power over the name of Jesus. Everything that had once seemed terrifying began to collapse, like a nightmare vanishing with the dawn. The chains around me shattered, the darkness fractured, breaking apart into nothing. The entire infernal world crumbled before my eyes. I felt my body grow lighter, an overwhelming weight lifting from me. And then I fell, plunging into an endless void. But this time I was not afraid. No longer bound by darkness, no longer tormented by despair. This time I fell into the light. I opened my eyes once more, and immediately I felt the change. No more darkness, no more fire, no more chains tightening around my soul. The terror had vanished, as if I had just awakened from an endless nightmare. I knelt down, but this time it was not out of fear or despair. Beneath me was a vast field of grass, green and soft like silk, cushioning my knees as though woven from pure tranquility. The air was crisp, carrying a fragrance of purity. Not the stench of fire and sulfur, but the scent of life, of freedom, of light. I inhaled deeply, and for the first time after all I had endured, my soul felt as light as the breeze. I looked up, and he was there. Jesus stood before me, bathed in a radiance so powerful it could consume the entire world, yet so gentle it did not hurt my eyes. Pure, resplendent, indescribable. His light did not merely illuminate the space around him, it banished every last trace of darkness lingering in my heart. He was more beautiful than anything I had ever imagined, more powerful than anything I had ever known, and his love poured over me like a cool river, quenching the thirst of a soul desperate for salvation. In his presence, everything I had seen, everything I had feared, the screams in hell, the unending void, faded into nothing, for in front of me there was only his light. Tears streamed down my face like a flood, not out of fear but out of overwhelming emotion, gratitude and realization. I ran to him, clinging to his feet, pressing my face against the hem of his robe like a lost child who had finally found their father. I sobbed, my entire body trembling, because I was exhausted, because I had endured too much suffering, because I had witnessed things no one on earth should ever have to see. "Lord, I don't want to be there anymore," I choked out, clinging to him as if letting go would send me spiraling back into eternal darkness. "Please, save me." Jesus knelt down, gently touching me, and the moment his hand rested upon me, I felt a wave of coolness rush through my very being. Every pain, every fear, every torment from hell, everything dissolved as if it had never existed. I felt lighter than the wind, as though every burden I had carried had been completely erased. Never before had I known a love so pure. A love that could not be extinguished, could not be stolen, could not be replaced. His eyes were filled with mercy, tender yet filled with immeasurable power. "I was never far from you." His voice was soft, yet it carried a strength capable of shattering all darkness. True faith is believing even when you cannot see me. In that instant, I understood everything, and it had never been clearer. Hell was real, but salvation in Christ was even more real. His love was stronger than any darkness, and his grace surpassed every condemnation. His victory was eternal, and no one could take it away from him. I had no more doubts, no more fears, no more hesitation. I knew I was saved, not because I was worthy, but because he loved me, because his grace was sufficient even for the most lost. I remained there on my knees, tears still streaming, but this time they were not tears of sorrow. They were the tears of salvation. Today's story comes to an end, but the message it carries continues to echo. Brothers and sisters, if you have read this far, I want to ask you one thing. Please write in the comments the country you are listening from, or simply type Amen to prove that you have received this message and share your thoughts. This is one of the most moving testimonies I have ever heard, a powerful revelation that cannot be ignored. I plead with you, do not keep this testimony to yourself. Share it with all your friends, your family, in your groups, everywhere you can. Someone needs to hear it. Someone needs to know that hell is real, but salvation in Jesus Christ is even more real. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because we will continue to share messages that can save souls. This is urgent. This is eternal. Jesus is knocking. Now is the time to answer.